Many of them had their summer internships canceled, and we're trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do? About that same time, Rabbi Mark Katz called me up and said, hey, we've been thinking here at Ner Tamid, there's all these kids and college kids who have had their summer plans canceled because camp is canceled. And we've been trying to figure out something we could do. And in both communities, the first ideas that arose was the possibility that we could in some way engage these students and young adults in doing some meaningful tikkun olam, doing some meaningful social action and volunteering and repair. So out of that came two initiatives. So the initiative that we started first was the Pressman internship. And this was directed at older high school students, 16 and above, and college-aged individuals. And in that, we have 6 pods. You're going to get to meet the pod leaders and hear about what those pods did. But we met weekly to teach the principles of community organizing and how to plan actions and how to make change. And we had no idea what would come of it. And in a matter of only weeks, these pods have put together some extraordinary projects. So I'm going to let Rabbi Katz say a little bit more about the volunteer element of this program and where that led.
Thanks. So it was a real exciting thing to be able to work together and to have these two communities come together to do such amazing work. I need to say, as the rabbi of Temple Ner Tamid, though I've seen what the older kids have done, the older students with the internship, and you're going to see a really diverse panel of what they've done. I'm so inspired by them. And I'm also inspired by our younger students. So we gathered, knowing that kids were not going to be going to camp, we figured, you know what, rather than spread out something throughout the whole summer, which is what the internship does, we were going to have a 2-week discrete period where we essentially replaced camp for a period of time for the students. So every day they came in the morning and they did some meaningful volunteer work from 9 to 12 or some period in between that. They did it for 2 weeks, 8 projects in all, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 2 weeks in a row. And we gave students the option to either be all virtual or to come in person. The people who came in person did a diversity of things. They made gift baskets one day and blankets to go to workers at Mountainside Hospital and also patients at Mountainside Hospital. They made dog toys for a dog shelter. They cooked dessert for Mesh, which is a local organization that feeds the hungry. We had students who collected food outside of King's Supermarket and other students that cleaned up both the gardens at B'nai Keshet and at Ner Tamid, and another group of students that worked to tidy up the trails at South Mountain Reservation. And so over the course of the 2 weeks, you saw a number of students really kind of not only get to know one another, because the truth is our 7th and 8th and 9th graders don't know each other from B'nai Keshet to Ner Tamid, and began to form friendships and talk, but also they got to see that the work of their hands mattered and they got to do real impressive stuff. I know for a fact that that students were not only craving the in-person interaction in a safe way, every student wore a mask, and the projects that we had made sure that students were socially distanced, but also it set the framework for the way that we might engage some of our teens throughout the course of the year, because people are craving a way in this world where they feel helpless to make a difference, to find a way to make a difference. And these students, about 25 or so of them, really did. So I could show you pictures and all that, but there's one kind of thing that I do want to show very briefly. We had to think creatively for those students who didn't feel comfortable coming in person, what they could do. And so we did get out the vote letters for those students. We wrote letters to people who are in nursing homes. And one project that one student took on, utilizing her talent, just to kind of give you a taste, was that all of our students who came in person one day when we were gardening told a joke. And we created a very short video called Young Jews Telling Jokes, based on the kind of series Old Jews Telling Jokes. And we're going to send that to a nursing home that we have a relationship with, so that the residents can feel like a little bit they had some visitors. So I'm going to show you just a quick clip from that to give you a taste of the creativity of the people who were in this group. So as I pull it up now. And for those who are here, I want to say later we will celebrate you. We're going to hear a little bit more about the work of the older students first, and then we're going to celebrate all our students together. But this will give you a little bit of taste. Just one moment. I forgot to click something I needed to.
The boat go when it's sick? The dock. Why did the mushroom go to the party?
Why did the mushroom?
Because he was a fun guy.
Oh!
Two muffins are in the toaster. One of them says, boy, it's hot in here. And the other one says, wow, talking muffin.
A mom, a dad, and a son are all going to the beach. Now the son has this really big, very expensive hat on. And while he's playing in the sand, he gets swept up by the waves. And he goes out to sea. Now the dad and the mom are very upset about this. The dad gets down on his knees, prays to God and says, God, please, if you're up there, please bring my son back. Then, a few minutes later, the shore sweeps up his son again. He's coughing, the hat isn't on, his hair's all messy, he's on the brink of death, but he still made it. The father puts his hand back together, prays to God and says, please, God, please, bring back his hat.
What's the hardest thing about learning to ride a bike? The pavement.
Animal. A fish, because it spends all day in school. Especially with no shoes. Barefoot. Not your
His least favorite day.
What day?
Friday.
Oh!
So a nurse tells the doctor, the invisible man's in your waiting room. And the doctor just says, well, tell him I can't see him.
Every time I see a bird flying by, I always wonder to myself, if I were a bird, who would I poop on?
Why do we tell actors to break away? Because there's always a cast.
So that just gives you just a quick view of the many things that they did and the different group of participants who were there during the first week. We had two different groups, the first week and a second week of participants. And so for you, if you were in that group, I want to say you really made a difference in the world and you should be very proud of yourself. And we're excited to see what else throughout the course of our year together we might be able to do. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Ariane Weitzman, I think, who is our next speaker, who's going to transition into learning about what the older students did.
You're right. I am the next speaker. Rabbi Mark, if you can mute yourself, and then it'll fix the speaker view. Hello, everyone, and welcome again. You've already heard from Rabbi Elliott and Rabbi Katz. The Pressman internship was really a leap of faith taken by the clergy and lay leadership of B'nai Keshet and Temple Ner Tamid. We heard in the spring from young adults and their families that there was so much energy and drive that could be harnessed and directed toward improving the world this summer as folks' regular summer jobs and paid and unpaid internships just disappeared. And a handful of focus groups and planning meetings paved the way for an 8-week program of serious study, hands-on action, and self-reflection. Our interns grappled with some really big ideas of community organizing, as well as the real problems of our communities, and created and deepened connections between community organizations already working in those spaces. Our interns will now be presenting the fruits of that labor. And this is really the central portion of our program tonight. We're going to hear from 6 pods working in various focus areas, which they will tell you about. The presentations are going to run back to back. We invite community members to submit questions about the presentations in the Zoom chat, and they are going to be curated and presented later. Our lay volunteers, Eric Scherzer, Amy Friedman, and Beth Rubin, who have put in countless hours into nurturing this program and shepherding it through the summer, they will be monitoring the incoming questions in the Zoom chat. So don't worry if you If you really have a burning question, just put it in the chat box. I'm going to turn over the presentations now to the various pods. We're going to start with the climate change pod, and I'm going to be sharing my screen so that we can see everybody's presentations.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Nick, but you need to unshare your screen, please.
Oh, unshare?
Yes.
All right.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah. All right, so we
so
are the...
Hold on one second, hold on one second.
Sorry. Oh, you have it. All right.
I have it. I have everybody so that we'll have all the optimized sounds.
That's great.
Go for it.
All right, so yeah, I'm Nick, and I'll be speaking about the climate change pod. So firstly, our goals. Our first goal was to learn about local environmental issues and to pick one of them, and alongside it, to create an action plan, brainstorm possible solutions. We narrowed down on bringing accessible clean water and appropriate waste management solutions to the attention of the Montclair Parks Advisory Board, as well as understand and spread information on the existing local composting system, and through the process to practice effective group collaboration and communication, and to apply lessons learned from the Pressman guest speakers. Now our actions. Firstly, we researched and surveyed accessible clean water and appropriate waste management solutions that could be applied to Montclair Parks. We drafted a proposal for the Parks Advisory Board and presented our suggestions to them. We scheduled a meeting with the Montclair Parks Advisory Board and outlined a comprehensive guide to composting. And finally, our outcomes and the preceding steps. We experienced real-life examples of lessons learned from Pressman guest speakers. We drafted an impressive proposal that aimed to implement accessible clean water and appropriate waste management solutions. We had a conversation with the Parks Advisory Board, got great feedback, and left with an understanding of what the next steps would be towards implementing our suggestions. And moving forward, we hope to formally submit our proposal to the Parks and Recreation Board, and then lobby to have our suggestions approved by the town of Montclair. Thank you.
Are you ready for your creative output to be shared?
Yep.
Over the summer, I came across an internship at Pressman. Soon I found myself working with Julia, Chris, and Kristen. After that, we were discussing climate stuff on Zoom, and now we hope for our parks to install some recycling bin.
We want to show you. We want to show you what we're gonna do. We want to show you. We want to show you what we're gonna do.
We surveyed parks and made remarks. We talked them through and had fun too. Drafting plans on Montclair Parks. No more plastic and no more mark.
Research bottle fillers. Plastic is a killer to animals and humans alike. Causes neurotoxicity, pollutes our cities, and also everyone should bike.
We want to show you. We want to show you what we're gonna do. We want to show you. We want to show you what we're gonna do.
I'm not here to show I can rap. The message is more important than that. We need to do our best to make a change, otherwise our planet will never be the same. The issue we are facing is pressing, and the people that deny it probably don't believe in science, especially those from companies that benefit, ruining the world all for some profit. We need to make a change because this is something future generations will face. We need to hold people responsible for the mistakes they make. I hope the people that continue to write the story end up doing it for the right reasons and not just for glory.
Thank you so much, Climate Change Pod. That was really cool. We're going to turn to the Electoral Politics Pod next, which will be represented by Abe, Noam, Riley, and Ben. Oop. Or we could listen to that again. Go ahead, Abe and Noam.
All right. Hi, all. I'm really proud to share with you some of the work that we've been doing in the Electoral Politics Pod. I guess we can go ahead to the next slide. As a pod, our overall goal was to try to increase voter participation, but especially ourselves being young people, we want to try to target young voters and first-time voters. I don't think I have to remind anybody on this call about how this fall, one of the biggest elections of our lifetime is coming up. And it's so important that we make sure people learn how to vote, especially learning how to vote in a pandemic, which is something that certainly hasn't happened in my lifetime and probably not in anyone else's lifetime we're here. As a group, one project we worked on was to focus on Montclair High School and increasing voter registration efforts for students and the entire Montclair High School community. Some of the actions we took as a pod included strategies of relational organizing, reaching out to friends and families, creating a database on municipal elections at the local level and then state and federal levels, voter registration drives at B'nai Keshet, connecting with the civic engagement efforts at Temple Ner Tamid as well, youth letter writing sessions for the Pressman volunteers, and helping people get connected to the presidential elections, phone banking, text banking. There's so many separate efforts all moving towards the same direction. But one highlight for sure as a pod was a meeting with the assistant principal of Montclair High School, Ms. Howell Rembert. To the next slide.
So we met with Principal Rembert as a pod, and she was able to tell us what Montclair High School is already doing to reach students and give them information on how to vote. So we learned that there are voter registration drives led by the Civics and Government Institute and the Center for Social Justice. And the school counselors provide forms to students at the beginning of each year in the homeroom. And then what they agreed to take on, some of our asks were more coordination between departments of the school, a more active student government, and to contact all 11th and 12th graders, so 17 and 18-year-olds and families with critical voter information. And the next steps that our pod has to take is to send out information to Montclair High School officials as it becomes available, and connecting with current Montclair High School student leaders to continue voter registration drives within the school.
And now we want to let Ben Raskin-Gross talk about his experience in the pod. So take it away, Ben.
Hey there, everyone. So would you guys be cool with me sharing my presentation on screen like a webinar? Yep. Since you guys don't have it, right? Cool. So, I learned a lot through this internship, but a big thing I learned was that there was a discrepancy between what I thought I could accomplish versus what I actually did. My expectations were high, but I adjusted them. As a result, the project that I did had to be something that would take very little of my attention versus a lot of it. So the project that I decided to do was making calls for Joe Biden. And because of this experience, there's current volunteering that I'm doing, and I'm continuing to do making Joe Biden phone calls. And Noam, I'm also working with you and whoever else wants to work with us on making lesson plans for high schoolers and college age students for them to learn more about voting, and young adults too. And this internship helped me to relearn tasks such as better managing my time and better multitasking. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for sharing. So for our group, our creative project was making an acrostic poem together. So if you reshare the screen, and then I'll read the poem for everyone. So if you can tell, it says civic engagement. So this is our poem. Came together for a cause, icebreakers. Vote, please vote. Inciting change, community. Entering the summer, not sure what to do. Gave this internship a chance and learned something new. Got inspired, engaged my community, educated new voters together. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. We're going to turn next to the Gun Violence Prevention Pod, which is going to be represented by Michael and Sonia.
So, hi everyone. My name is Sonia,
I'm Michael. And I'm Ezra.
and we were part of the Gun Violence Prevention Pod, and we're going to talk to you about our work with the Do Not Stand Idly By campaign. Ready? Yeah, so why we chose this topic. While we are a group of varying ages and backgrounds, we were all activated into the world of gun violence prevention by the horrible mass shootings that took place in Sandy Hook in 2012 and in Pittsburgh in 2018. Other forms of gun violence that led us to this work and were important for us to learn and talk about through our experience included domestic violence, where the presence of a gun in domestic violence situations increases the risk of homicide by 500%. And in hate crimes. In an average year, over 10,300 hate crimes in the United States involve a firearm. That's more than 28 a day. And that's especially significant to us considering Pittsburgh, Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting in 2016, and the Charleston church shooting in 2015. The Do Not Stand Idly By campaign, drawing its name from the biblical verse, disavowing indifference to bloodshed. The Do Not Stand Idly By campaign is a national effort launched by faith leaders and citizens who work at the local level to implore gun manufacturers to take responsibility for the guns that they sell and ask the public sector to use their buying power to keep them responsible. In particular, the campaign recognizes that state and local public sector leaders, that's mayors, county executives, attorneys general, and governors, are significant customers of and investors in companies who manufacture guns. Local and state officials buy significant numbers of guns. In fact, public sector purchases account for 40+% of the firearms market in the United States.
We chose Montclair, Bloomfield, and Verona because we had participants who were from those towns. Montclair, Bloomfield, and West Orange had already signed on to the Do Not Stand Idly By campaign. Verona had not. Gun violence is also a community ailment, So we found it important not just to target mayors and towns, but also our the general public. Our plan was to ask the mayors of Montclair, Bloomfield, and West Orange to recommit to the Do Not Stand Idly by campaign as they had already signed on, but especially because Montclair has a new mayor, and to ask Verona to commit to the campaign. While we were unable to solidify any of the meetings with the mayors, we did have some positive exchanges with the mayors of Montclair and West Orange, with the goal of raising public awareness and perhaps even applying pressure to those who we had not heard back from yet. We wrote letters to the editors and sent them to local newspapers. These letters highlight and encourage individual citizens to activate their power to make change at the local level.
As mentioned, we chose towns that our participants came from. Future efforts should specifically target local towns that have not yet signed the pledge. Also, future plans should include working with Moms Demand Action to raise awareness for the Be Smart campaign, an initiative to increase education on safe storage of guns. Be Smart framework is designed to help parents and adults normalize conversations about gun safety and take responsible actions that can prevent child gun deaths and injuries.
So, oh no, we have one little, it's fine. For our creative piece, we tried to flex our creative muscles and took the acronym for Do Not Stand Idly By, which is DNSIB, and made some quirky, funny sentences. So the one that's missing is Doofenshmirtz navigating sunburn is bonkers, and that's referencing Doofenshmirtz from the wonderful show Phineas and Ferb. My other favorite is dogs never shout, I bark. And so we just wanted to take a moment and thank you guys for coming to our program tonight.
Yes, thank you for listening to us.
And be healthy and happy.
Thank you. We're going to turn to the Immigration Justice Pod, which will be represented by Izzy and Julie.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Izzy, and Julie is my co-leader for this pod. So our goals, we had several, as you can see, were to learn more about immigration in the US, specifically asylum, the laws regarding asylum and the bans, which are all very complicated, take some actions on various levels here in Montclair and broader, understand more about the rhetoric surrounding immigration in the US, how that can be harmful and where it can be seen, recognize that immigration justice actions can look very different and sometimes are really flashy and exciting and sometimes are not, but are all super important, and just generally become more informed activists in this area. So a few of the things that we did. We submitted a very comprehensive, long public comment opposing the recent asylum ban. That was at the beginning of our few weeks. We helped an organization called Make the Road New Jersey make some banners for their COVID recovery for undocumented workers campaign, and we hung one in Montclair briefly, and they've been using our banners for many, many events still today. We helped out with the Montclair Sanctuary Alliance. Specifically, we're working on a research project about the rights of undocumented workers, and that will actually be a public Google Doc as well as kind of an Instagram type slideshow. You'll see that in a second, that can be shared generally. So that should be a long lasting thing. And more than anything, we did a ton of learning, which was awesome. We talked about current events. There was new stuff every single week. We learned more about the asylum process. We learned about Black immigrants in the US, and we had an amazing teaching from a rabbi from Hayas, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, tell us about kind of the Jewish frame on the immigration of history in the US, and we did some really cool tech studies. So that was really great. Julie, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, I can take it from here.
So yeah, so here are some examples of some of the stuff that we worked on. So like Izzy described, one of the things that I feel really lucky to have been able to do with this group is we really got to do we had a really nice balance between learning and direct action. So you can see the picture on the left here is, oh, if you could go back to that previous slide really quickly, that would be great. Great, thank you so much. So, oh, that's okay. I can also just talk about this picture. This is a picture, oh, okay. All of these are pictures of different things we did. So right now on the screen, you can see on the left is a little sample from our public comment that we wrote, which actually ended up being an extremely impactful way to take action against Trump's asylum bans. And the bans are currently being enjoined right now because so many people wrote public comments. So that was very exciting. And then on the right, you can see this is an example of some of the infographics that some of our pod members worked together to create. And this is one way that we're taking a lot of the learning and research that we did and making it accessible to lots of people. And you can go to the next picture. And here is a picture of the direct action that we took with this group, Make the Road New Jersey, which was doing a campaign to promote recovery for all undocumented immigrants. So banners like this were hung all around New Jersey and New York that some of them said recovery for all, and then some of them said alivio para todos. And that was really exciting because we got to take part in an action that was also being executed all across the state. So we were part of a larger movement that day, even though we're all socially isolated. Go to the next one. And so some ways that we're thinking to promote sort of a continuation of engagement and learning around this issue are definitely to start out by watching and learning and listening to more stories from immigrants. Specifically, a wonderful way to really get engaged in this issue is to listen to personal stories, and there's so many good opportunities to do that. So two suggestions we have are the Immigration Nation documentary on Netflix and a This American Life episode about like people seeking asylum, which actually won a Pulitzer Prize, I believe. And then for the community in general, the community can always just be doing more to really be learning about what asylum is and who is allowed to ask for asylum and how we can support asylum seekers, especially right now because the laws just change like on a weekly basis. And to just keep in ear out about local actions and initiatives you can participate in, especially because Montclair itself has a Sanctuary Alliance, and it's always a really good idea to just keep paying attention to how you can be an agent of change for the immigrants in your community. And we have a video from some of our pod members that we would like to share with you about what they learned.
Pressman internship has taught me that anyone can make a change and gain power by using their voice and speaking out for what they know is right. After these past few weeks, I definitely feel more enabled and prepared to continue fighting for the changes that need to happen.
The biggest thing I've learned during the Pressman internship is that numbers equal pressure equals power. If you have a lot of people, you can create a lot of pressure. I think that the thing that people in this community need to understand is that you need to listen to the most radical among you. They're the one with the most experience and the most answers.
The biggest takeaway that I have from the Pressman internship is that knowledge truly is power. And I've learned so much with this group that I feel even more motivated and more enabled to continue fighting for justice.
I think that often the educational aspect of being an activist is something that gets overlooked, and I've recognized how crucial that is throughout my time doing this internship.
Thank you so much. We are going to turn to our last two groups, which both worked on the issue of racial injustice and inequality, and we'll turn to the Racial Pod 1 first, for lack of a better name.
Hi, so I'm Evie, one of the co-leaders with Gabe in the Racial Injustice Pod.
Hi everybody, I'm Gabe as well, or I'm Gabe, and yeah. So our goal for our pod was to defund the Montclair Police Department because along with the national tides that we got swept up in as this Pressman internship was taking place, we examined our town's budget and we decided that a town's budget is the biggest tell of a town's priorities and values, and thus we wanted the budget to reflect the progressive nature of the town that we live in by redirecting the funds and responsibilities away from our overfunded and systematically racist police department into other areas of the community that would actually help people rather than inflict violence upon the people who don't need it.
So our actions can be broken down into 3 main categories, which are organize, meet, and research. So we worked with a local organizing group called Montclair Beyond Policing. We met with the mayor and councilors Lori Price Abrams and David Cummings, and we did a deep dive on Montclair's budget and history and compared it with the state and federal trends.
And our biggest, most visible action of them all that I'm sure some of you were present at was we hosted a town hall, virtual town hall with speakers from the NAACP Housing Committee, from Skate Essex, from Montclair Beyond Policing, and from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Montclair. We had over 450 registrants at the time, and to date, the video currently has over 5,000 views on Facebook.
So hi, my name is Caleb, and I'm going to be giving a quick synopsis of the pitch we made to our representatives at the town hall. So we set out to examine whether or not Montclair is the liberal utopia it often considers itself to be. Are Montclair police impervious to the racist and unjust tendencies that we see all around our country? So we began by analyzing data from use of force reports from Montclair Police Department from 2017 to present, and we found some startling numbers. First, African Americans in our town are 300% more likely to have force used on them. Further, 1/3 of all uses of force by our police are in response to mental health calls. And of those mental health related uses of force, 78% of victims are Black. So that kind of begs the question, should we really have insufficiently trained armed officers appearing on the doorsteps of people experiencing mental episodes? And there are a ton of towns around the country that have developed alternatives to this, including one called Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon. I recommend looking into it. So another problem we found had to do with traffic. Our police chief Conforti mentioned in a recent town hall that his officers spend a majority of their time on traffic. And that also begs the question, do we need armed officers responding or handing out tickets and directing traffic around construction sites? There are also cities like Berkeley, California, for example, that have recently diverted traffic enforcement responsibilities to citizens rather than police officers. And could you go to the next slide with some graphs? Okay, so we also analyzed the size of our police force compared to those of similar nearby towns to understand where we stand among our neighbors. We found, as you can see, that we have vastly more police officers per capita than towns such as Clifton, West Orange, Teaneck, you can see. And you'll also notice that we have way more officers than towns with more crime and less crime. We also have many more police than surrounding towns that are more wealthy than us and less wealthy, towns that are more diverse and less diverse. We are just a complete regional aberration. In some, our officers have been delegated responsibilities for which they're insufficiently trained, and in some cases, not even needed. On top of that, we have far more officers than our crime rate requires, and the $16 million the MPD gets, the single largest slice of our budget, could be allocated to other vital programs that have been starved of their resources. To name a few, COVID small business and rent relief, aftercare and before care for our schools, and support for our homeless and hungry populations. Montclair's police force needs a big change. I'm done. Thank you.
So we want to keep it going. So this is our to-do list. We want to continue to meet with counselors to look for a way forward and find what changes can be made in short, medium, and long term. So currently our group is in contact with Bob Rousseau and Peter Jacobellis to meet. and we're planning on researching state bills and finding support for them. And the reason we're researching state bills is people are hesitant to act on new ideas, and research into state bills shows that they are neither new nor radical and have powerful support.
So before we give you guys our creative portion, which will be quick, we want to let you guys know what you can do to support the work that we've been doing. Make your voice heard. You can attend council meetings. They happen bi-weekly, I believe, and you can always call in to be heard publicly. And you can express your concerns about policing, budgeting, and anything else that troubles you. You can email the same representatives to demand change. Elected representatives are elected to work with us and to listen to us. All power to all the people. And lastly, please educate yourself. While we do appreciate the opportunity to help educate people older and younger than us, we also need to understand that in the information age, ignorance is a choice. So before you ask someone something that would be just as easy to Google, keep in mind that. However, also please keep asking questions because the answers will amaze you. And lastly, here's Zoe Gelman to deliver for us a wonderful poem.
As Gabe mentioned, I'm Zoe, and my sister Yael and I wrote a poem that I think our whole pod can agree describes our experience throughout as a part of this internship. Unfortunately, Yael is at work right now, so fellow pod member Carly will be filling in and helping me deliver the poem. For a month or two, we talked on Zoom. Little did we know what chaos we'd brew.
We took a look at ourselves and the town of Montclair and this veil of progressivism that we always wear.
Don't sit on your laurels, Counselor Abrams said. All the MPD stats we sat down and read.
The people must see this, we all exclaimed. Systemic racism is fundamental to the MPDS rate.
A date was set, our charts were drawn. We advertised until the break of dawn.
A town hall was held with 2,000 there, with Montclair Beyond Policing, UU, CM, Skate MTC, and NAACP, we made Montclair aware.
The fight is not over. There's so much to do. Let's make Montclair the first to defund the blue. Thank you.
Proud of my group. Thank you, guys.
And our last pod, the Racial Justice Pod, Group 2.
Hello, my name's Danielle. I am one of the leaders for the second Racial Inequality Pod. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. And so our goal, other than the things on the screen, was to connect with Montclair-based organizations and groups that have been involved in anti-racist work for a long time. While we are here as the Pressman internship, only temporarily, these groups have been doing this work long before us, and we will continue to do this work long after the program ends. We thought it would be best to center those organizations in our pod, and our goal was to shine a light on them and support their actions and work.
Here are some of the actions we've taken. We've reached out to organizations like Montclair Beyond Policing and similar organizations. Also, we read Our Prison is Obsolete by Angela Davis. We met with Lily from Beyond Policing and discussed ways to get involved and spread awareness.
So once we did all of these things, we decided to take all of our work and create a website. I'm going to link it here in the chat, and I invite everyone to open it up and take a look, share it, look at the links. We decided we wanted to just create a place, a platform to be able to share some of the resources and organizations and events that are going on in Montclair and wider in New Jersey, and also around the nation. So check it out and share it.
Obviously we didn't get to do all of it, but our goals in the future are to really spread the information that is in this website, because it will help the community get more involved in anti-racist work and supporting the organizations that are already doing this work and creating these events that you can find on the website. And also on the website are like templates that you can fill out and send to local government officials. And so we're hoping that the website really gets spread so that everyone can take part in this anti-racist work. And we're also creating a physical pamphlet to make sure that we get this information to as many people as possible.
So as we were reading Our Prison's Obsolete, we found this quote, which I think really encapsulates all of the work that we've been doing and all of the things that we've been focusing on. We thus think about imprisonment as a fate reserved for others, a fate reserved for the, quote, evildoers, to use a term recently popularized by George W. Bush. Because of the persistent power of racism, quote, criminals and evildoers are in the collective imagination fantasized as people of color. The prison therefore functions ideologically as an abstract site into which undesirables are deposited, relieving us of the responsibility of thinking about the real issues affecting those communities from which prisoners are being drawn in such disproportionate numbers. And the name of our website, Invest in Montclair, speaks to that as well. And then we also had a little meme after this that I think is there. And it's, during our research, we kind of realized how policing in America has never really been about stopping crime. It's just been about social control. And oftentimes, in its enforcement of social control, it's been a very racist tool. So this kind of shows what we've learned. And again, everyone look at the website and share that to as many people as you know, so that we can really get this information out. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us.
Thank you to all the pods for your incredible work. At B'nai Kesha, we often do the ASL clap, finger wiggle. I think Nair Tamid sometimes does the warm hands. Whatever would express your gratitude and appreciation for all of this work, I invite you to do it now so that we can all see that physical manifestation of our gratitude. We're going to turn now back to Izzy and Gabe. And Izzy and Gabe grew up at B'nai Keshet and became these amazing adults. You know, I don't know how that happened, but it keeps happening. And they provided the youth leadership within our earliest planning meetings and worked hard to recruit all of our pod leaders. So I'm going to hand it over to Izzy and Gabe to thank all of our pod leaders who did such an incredible job.
Yeah, thanks, Rabbi Ariane. We basically just wanted to give a huge shout out and recognize the role that the pod leaders had in this whole project. This whole thing was a huge guinea pig, basically. And everyone involved had to kind of take a leap, and the pod leaders really cannot be overstated. Really committed and put in so much time and work into all these awesome projects. So we just wanted to give a huge thanks
yeah,
for everybody listed.
Just like what Izzy said, a lot of flying blind, you would not believe. So to all the pod leaders, you guys showed incredible fortitude, creativity, courage, strength, bravery, friendship. Anyway, it's been nothing but a positive experience for all of us. So when I say your name, please wave to the camera and accept this blessing. Sonia Abrams and Michael Gutterman of the Gun Control Group. We have Kristen Lowe, Julia Colin, and Chris Zavalos of the Climate Change Group. We have Noam Brenner and Abe Plout of the Electoral Politics Group. We have Izzy Levine and Julie Schreiber of the Immigrants' Rights Group. We have Danielle Sklar and Beza Lukes for the Racial Justice Group. And then we also have myself, Gabe Slon, and Nevi Levy for the other Racial Justice Group. So huge thank you to all of us for making this thing as great as it has been. And thank you to all the adults behind us, because we're also adults, who helped us every step of the way. So it's not flying blind if you have a co-pilot, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, thank you guys. I'll pass it back to Ariane.
Thank you. I'm actually going to turn it over to Amy, Eric, and Beth, who will help facilitate some Q&A. If you all are ready.
Yeah, I think we are. And I would encourage everyone else who's listening who hasn't already asked a question to enter it into the chat. The first one comes from... Is that it? Can you put your foot on that? Yeah, the first one comes from Joel Giral. to the climate change pod. What other environmental ideas did you consider, and why did you pick parks, water, and recycling? I don't know who among your pod is going to take it, but we're throwing it to you.
Chris, I think you had a really good response to this if you want to share it.
Yeah, so in our first meeting, we had a more or less a brainstorm of many ideas, and some of the ideas we had were renewable energy in Montclair, whether that be in the schools or traffic lights, as an example, taking corporations into the account and making them pay because of what they're doing, like plastic bag taxes, for example, carbon taxes. Also, a lot of people spoke about cleaning up parks, and I think that was really the main reason we landed where we did, because most people called for the same action of wanting to see our town have more recycling bins, just more efficient systems, I think is really what it came down to. And it was just something that seemed like could be done in the 6 weeks time that we had, and also because of the current situation that we're living in. So.
Okay. For the electoral politics pod, you seem like you have some commitments from the high school that have to be followed up on. How are you going to ensure that that gets done and that we get all Montclair High School students registered to vote?
So during our meeting with Assistant Principal Rembert, I remember we were all actually surprised that she was so enthusiastic in her support and her affirmations that she would be following through. What's on us is to be making sure that any information that we want sent out to Montclair High School families, any information we want posted to the Montclair High School website gets there. And so because of that, just as voters throughout the state and throughout the country are keeping their eyes and ears open for how elections are going to be held and what the process is, applications for mail-in ballots, all of these things, there's this constant vigilance that we have to have, but we were surprised to have such enthusiastic support and commitment from the administration to work with us as soon as that information becomes available. So we're confident that we have allies at Montclair High.
And another aspect of our campaign is just empowering people in Montclair High School and the groups that are already doing that. So the small learning communities are a great avenue that the administration wants to support. There's also like the groups within the high school. A big thing that the assistant principal mentioned was having a stronger student government. I know one of the student government leaders is actually a member of B'nai Keshet, and her mom works in politics, and I've already talked to her. So it's not just on us, I think, as a pod, as much as we did it, but it's really on the community. So if you are in high school or you're in this call or you know high school students, we really challenge you to continue these efforts, because as much as we can do in 6 weeks, it's going to take a little bit more to get everyone registered.
Okay, the next question is for the racial justice pod. It was just posted in the chat from Joanna Lukes. Did you ever hear back from the mayor or anyone regarding following up on your ideas around policing to the racial justice pod?
Yeah, I can take this one quickly. What Lori said in the chat is true. They have, the council has a public safety committee, which is currently, as they tell us, looking into it. But yes, 3 weeks after the, I think 3 weeks now since the town hall, and all we've heard so far is along the lines of we are looking into it. So we've yet to hear anything concrete or any concrete ways that they plan on moving forward, but that's where we are.
Okay, for the gun violence pod, did you get any commitments from any of the local mayors? And if not, if you had more time, what would your next steps be to put more pressure on them?
We did not have any commitments from local mayors. To reiterate, Montclair, West Orange, and Bloomfield, before we took on this project, had already signed the public officials pledge. And so our ask of them involved more along the lines of possibly being part of a smart gun safety technology buyers consortium, where they would actually take on some smart gun technology and see how it works and if it works in the real world. And that was a little more technical, and so the ask got a little lost, or just was a complication that we didn't foresee. But for future steps, like we mentioned, looking to towns that hadn't yet signed on to the pledge would be a good starting place, just to increase the amount of awareness at the municipal level to towns that were not already aware of the campaign.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions, then a general question for everybody. For the immigration pod, Recovery for All, that was the banner you hung. Tell us a little bit more about that campaign and what does it actually mean? Expand.
Sure. So Recovery for All is talking about the recent COVID relief stimulus packages that have gone out by the state of New Jersey, and the fact that undocumented workers have not been included at all in those efforts. They make up a lot of our essential workers and pay millions and millions of dollars towards New Jersey and federal taxes, yet they've been many over 150 days without income during this time. So this is an effort to have the governor and the state legislature include undocumented workers in the COVID relief efforts.
Okay.
And also something additionally that was really cool about being able to participate in that movement was that it was part of a full week of actions from Make the Road. So there were, in different cities all over New Jersey, there were presentations happening with the same banners and the same messages.
Cool. Another question coming in for the other racial justice pod. Your website is fantastic. What are your plans for keeping it going and updated, and how are you going to let people know about the site?
I can answer that question. Yeah, so that's a good question. So we currently are hoping to keep it updated pretty regularly, especially with events and stuff. Right now, only one person from our pod has access to it, but we are planning to maybe change that so that it can be constantly updated with different things. And we're hoping to get it sent out to the various like newsletters that the synagogues have, as well as posting it in the different Montclair groups, like Share Montclair and whatnot. And we also are in the future hoping to make some kind of pamphlet with the information that's in it, so it's more accessible to people who are not so technologically adept than that. So yeah.
I'm looking at the time and see we have a little bit of time, so I want to go back to the electoral politics group. Many of you and ask a question more broadly. Many of you are in colleges, going back to school. Some are in swing states. And are really significant this year. Has anything that you've learned this summer inspired you to do something back at schools so that more people are registered to vote, more college students are registered to vote, and get young people out? What ideas do you have about that?
So I can speak some to what Indiana University does. Myself, I won't actually be returning to Bloomington, but I am registered to vote in Indiana. And as the election comes closer, it'll become a little bit clearer and easier to understand how am I actually going to be voting myself. However, as a university, and Tufts University is maybe the real model in terms of researching student engagement at the college level and how to connect with students. But the Big Ten Conference, they actually have a voter registration challenge amongst themselves. So taking the competition off of the athletic fields and into polling stations. And so there's a lot of different voter registration drives, and especially on social media this summer in particular, as everybody is inside, social distancing. There's a lot of information around elections and social justice issues more broadly being shared. And so I think it's through relational organizing, peer-to-peer, people within their own networks, and also some of these institutional initiatives and competitions. Because at the end of the day, in America, we value democracy, and we want people voting, and that's something that's important to leaders in every part of the country at every school.
Let's hope we value democracy. I know the people on this call certainly do. There's a general question from Joan Gary to everyone. This is a little bit of a free-for-all, and I think the best way to handle it, Rabbi Ariane, is for people who want to answer to raise their, use their hand raising function in the chat to, and then you'll let them unmute themselves to speak. What skills did you learn during this internship, and what surprised you? Anybody want to take that on? Raise your hand, and then we'll hear your thoughts. I know many of you learned not to be shy, so.
I see Noam's hand. Noam, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So I think my biggest takeaway, I always love the words and the labels that we have in our actual meetings. So when we think about community organizing, that really second word, organizing and being organized, I think was like my big takeaway. And in that skill, it really showed, when we started off, we were kind of not sure what we were going to do as a pod. It's very intimidating. How can you get something done so quickly? In 6 weeks, how can you make a difference? But it wasn't really until we came together and we were like, this is what we're deciding to do. We had this goal of going to Montclair High School, and it totally changed within our pod. We went from, always staying to our 1 hour meetings to, going on for multiple hours writing a script. So I think I was very surprised to see the transformation within our group. And I really think it matters. When you're being organized, it's not just coming together, but you need to be coordinated. You need to have a plan. And so that's really beneficial when you're creating a campaign and doing social action work, that you think about that second word.
Am I seeing Sam's hand? Go for it, Sam.
I would say my biggest takeaway from it is just, I think that especially at least for me, starting out doing this kind of work, it always seems like a really big, daunting thing, and you don't even know how to begin. And so having something that really gives you a network to begin, I've done some of my firsts in different types of action through this program, and it just made everything seem a little more reachable because of the knowledge I had, but also just the experience of seeing so many young people like me succeeding at doing so many big actions.
Cool. If there are no more hands up, we'll wrap up this question and answer section. And I just wanted to really also put in a super thanks to Amy Friedman and Beth Rubin, who did a lot of work with the pods, and also Gabe Slon and Izzy Levine. This really wouldn't have happened without them. So kudos to them all. And that's it for this section, Rabbi.
Thank you. So I'm going to be turning it over to Clergy Associate Ronnie Pressman from Temple Ner Tamid, who will be talking a little bit about Freddie, who this entire program has been named for, and presenting virtually a certificate of completion for all of our participants, which we'll figure out how to get to you for real in hard copy. And I'll turn it over to you, Ronnie.
Thank you so much.
I will tell you that part of this I recorded in advance because I knew that there was no chance that I could do this. But I know that I can personally thank everyone on behalf of the entire Pressman family who's made this come to fruition, as we said so quickly. So I'm going to name names. I need to thank Rabbi Mark Katz, Rabbi Elliot Tepperman, Rabbi Ariane Weitzman, my good friend Ira Schwartz, who's our educator at Temple Ner Tamid. And then I'd like to thank Amy Friedman, Amy Winkleman, Lori Price Abrams, Eric Scherzer, Beth Rubin, the pod leaders, which we'll see them in a moment, the pod interns, the volunteers, and of course, all of the parents that came and helped us with the volunteer experience. So I would also like to share something about Freddie, because I think that there are many people that maybe perhaps did not really know Freddie, and I'm going to share that now. Who was Fred Pressman? A generous man of heart and soul, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a social advocate for those in need, one that always responded, Hineni, here I am. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. So it is my honor at this point to acknowledge all the people that really worked so hard on this entire event. And I will share with you many people. You might know them, you might not, but they all deserve to have a big thank you for this. These are the internship pods. These are all the people that have been involved over this such short time that seems like it was such a long time, but not. And what I love about this is not the next generation, it's the next generation. Six pods. They started out not really knowing where they were going to be going, but they worked so hard, and this is what they came up with. And you've seen all of the work that they've done, something to be so proud of. This is one of the certificates. Akiva happens to be alphabetically at the top by A. This is one of the certificates that will be presented, as they will all be presented to the social justice interns. These are the volunteers. These volunteers were amazing. It was a hot week. It was so hot outside that we wished we were inside, but they were outside working really hard on so many projects, so many different sites, and I am just so proud of them as well. And this is a copy of their certificate as volunteers. I just want to say on behalf of all of the Pressman family, whether they're on the screen or not, some of them might be hiding, and that's okay. We share in the gratitude of knowing that Freddie's legacy will continue. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Ronnie. I love that over time we kept calling this Pressman, and that more and more what began as an effort to honor Freddie, but was really a program, its own independent program, became more and more associated with his memory. And it is beautiful, the tribute that you just shared, and I'm so grateful you've been a part of this, and really beautiful, loved the certificates you've created. We spent a lot of time talking with our volunteers who have been out every single day using their hands and feet and bodies to take action, how they can beautify the mitzvah, how they can practice chidur mitzvah, how this kind of volunteering is a kind of beautification. And I'm so grateful that we have beautiful certificates to give to all of you in appreciation for that. And I want to offer both to our volunteers and to our interns a short prayer teaching. So one of the teachings that has always been most meaningful to me is the words of Rabbi Tarfon. And supposedly Rabbi Tarfon used to go around all the time saying something. And what he used to say is, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin livatel mimene. So it is not your duty to complete the work, but you are not free to desist from it. Whether you've been using your hands to garden and beautify our congregations, or to maintain a hiking trail, or to write letters to encourage people to vote, or whether you have been using your energy and your wits to build relationships and to organize power and to take action, I want all of you who've been involved with Pressman to know that you have inspired us. You may not have completed the work. The world may still be very broken, but you have done so much work. And you have inspired us to pick up where you left off. And even though I want to say it's on us, your community, to together continue to build power and create change and shape this world so that it aligns with our Jewish values, I also want to say to you that the task is great. You've accomplished a lot, but there is so much more to do. I'm proud to know that you don't feel free to desist, and that you will continue to persist, to take action, to build connections, and to shape our Jewish world. Mazel tov on this great accomplishment. Yasher koach.
We will end our program with a song that I think most of us know. Ronnie beautifully sang it for us, and it's on the next slide, which I'll share with the words. And that will be the conclusion of our program. We will send out a recording link to a YouTube recording within the next day, as well as a link to all of the slides that were shared tonight. Thank you all so much for being here.
Olam chesed yivane, yadadai, yadai, yadadai. 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 I will build this world from love, yadadai, yadai, yadadai. And you must build this world from love, yadadai, yadai, yadadai. And if we build this world from love, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, then God will build this world from love, yadadai, yadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yibane, 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 yadadai, yadai, yadadai.
Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful night.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Yasher koach.
Yasher koach.
Hey, do you want me